कह श्री तारतमयीन को सब सेवकों समेत परहेज कराए चार बात का एक बुल नी कर दिल लेता एक बुल कर दिल लेता कह श्री तारतमयीन को बोले श्री प्राणनाथ प्यारे की जय सद्गुरु महाराज की जय कृष्ण कन्हैया लाल की जय. So on yesterday's discourse we talked about Chintamani, the awakening of Chintamani, how Mahamati Swami Sri Prananath revealed the secrets of the process of creation that Chintamani was unaware of, but was foretold by Kabir that those who could reveal the secrets, those who could reveal the true meaning of these verses, would be the disciple of that saint or divine personality. It so happened that Mahamati Swami Sri Prananath revealed the secret of those verses. We talked about that yesterday. And as Chintamani had so many disciples, initially he was hesitant to listen to the criticism of Mahamati Prananath. He wanted it done in private, not openly, because he had some of that ego left in him, because he was still the spiritual master of more than 500 disciples. But as Mahamati Prananath had the revelations, Sunore Sataki Banjare Ek Baat Kahun Samajhaye. So as the Bani was revealed to him and how the spiritual masters, spiritual leaders are misguiding individuals, and as he talks about the consequences of that, then Chintamani finally realizes that it was time for him to give up all he had, his ego, his personality, his leadership, and things of that nature. And he says, Ab maro kale kutte ko lati sira upara. And he's ready to submit wholeheartedly to the feet of Prananath as he realizes that he knows nothing compared to the ocean of knowledge that Mahamati Prananath had with him. Mahamati Prananath knew the secrets of all the scriptures, although Chintamani was the follower, a saint of Kabir tradition. Mahamati Prananath revealed the true meaning of Kabir's teaching, and Chintamani finally submitted to the lotus feet of Prananath. And when Prananath initiated Chintamani and most of his disciples into the faith, he prohibited those newly initiated followers from doing 4 things. The first thing was Eka haram kaha mansako, dusra haram sarab, tisra aurat birani taje so paave hayati aba. And the 4th one, chori jhutha bolana. So the 4 things that were prohibited for those newly initiated Sundarsats was the first one, non-vegetarian diet. Because Krishna Bhakti tradition, be it Hare Ram, Hare Krishna movement or International Society for Krishna Consciousness movement, all these movements, they preach non-violence, they preach compassion, they preach kindness as the pillars of spiritual practice. And they go by the rule of Ahimsa Paramo Dharma. Non-violence is the greatest religion, greatest faith. So Mahamati Prananath said, you would give up your non-vegetarian diet and become vegetarian. So the first thing that Mahamati Prananath prohibited these new Sundarsats was to give up on their non-vegetarian lifestyle. The second was the consumption of alcohol. Although Mahamati Prananath does not specifically say that it is sinful or haram as explained in Quran, Mahamati suggested against alcohol intake because of its potential negative effects. Those engaged in spiritual sadhana, spiritual practice, And in pursuit of self-realization, alcohol consumption works as a deviation from that spiritual practice. It distorts the well-being of our mind. As such, Mahamati Prananath prohibited them from alcohol intake. The third one, he says, Tisara aurata viranita je. He prohibited them against extramarital relationships. So no relationships out of marriage, because it is stated in Vedic scriptures that one should treat other women as mothers. Matrivat paradarishu. They should be considered as moms or mothers. And the fourth thing that Mahamati Prananath prohibited them was dishonesty, speaking falsehood, promoting falsehood. These four things were prohibited for this new Sundar Satsi. So if we look deeper into it, Mahamati Prananath does not promote many ritualistic practices. There are not that many do's and don'ts in the teachings of Mahamati Prananath. He does not talk about who should you marry or how should your beard be. He doesn't talk about what food specifically that you should eat or you should not. He doesn't talk a lot about the ritualistic practices, because the knowledge of Mahamati Prananath, the revelation of Mahamati Prananath is marfatiya. Marfatiya meaning that knowledge which aligns you, your soul, with the Lord Supreme. It has the absolute understanding. It gives you the detailed understanding of your soul and the Lord Supreme. So it is all, Mahamati Prananath's teachings is all about re-establishing that lost relationship between a soul and the Lord Supreme. And Mahamati Prananath also didn't talk much about these rituals, because Shastra le chale Satguru soye bani sakala ko ek aratha hoye, because there were already a lot of scriptures talking about those rituals. So Mahamati Prananath didn't want to add on to it. And rituals and ritualistic practices, the yajnas, the ritualistic practices only take a soul to heavenly places. They would not ensure moksha or liberation. Because one of the primary ritualistic Vedic scriptures, Garud Puran, when somebody dies, they do the ritualistic ceremony based on that, the teachings of that book. In that last chapter of that book, in the 16th chapter of Garud Purana, Lord Vishnu says all the Vedic scriptures, all the understanding of Vedic scriptures and the ritualistic practices are useless in one's pursuit of liberation. It says, Na vedadhyayanan muktin na sastra pathanadapi jnanadevahi kaivalyam nanyatha vinatatmajha. It is with the transcendent understanding. It is only with the understanding of this transcendent understanding that a soul realizes its glory and attains salvation. So Mahamati Prananath's teaching does not contain much in regards to the ritualistic practices, do's and don'ts. You should do this, you should not do this, you should marry this person, you should not marry this person, you should speak in such a way, you should pray in such a way. There is no such restrictions, there are no such conditions. So Mahamati Prananath's understanding, Mahamati Prananath's revelations are all about finding that connection. So if you look deeper into Prananath's teachings, there are not that many ritualistic prescriptions. So only 4 things were prohibited for these newly inducted Sundarsats. And all the Sundarsats, all these new Sundarsats agreed do what Mahamati Prananath preached. So Mahamati Prananath starts awakening them with the teachings of Braja, Ras, Leela, and all the details of Bhagavatam. And Chintamani and his followers all became the disciple of Mahamati Prananath. And one day, Chintamani asked Prananath to give him a new name, because the name Chintamani had been defamed. Because with that name, Chintamani was engaged in misguiding his followers into wrong beliefs. He was not even aware of the glory of Kabir. He was promoting his son Kamal, who was nothing but a true devotee of Maya, true devotee of worldly engagements. He was totally lost in the world. He did not even know about Kabir and his glory. So he said, "My name is defamed. Can you please give me a new name?" Because he said, I'm born anew into this new life, as I have got this new identity. As Mahamati Prananath says, "Jis dehi Prabhu purana mili hai, soi janma tumhara." The Vedic scriptures state the same in regards to having a second life when we receive the mantra of Sri Krishna. Krishna mantropadeshena maya dura mupagata kripaya guru devasya dvitiyam janma kathyate. So Vedic scriptures state that the day we get the Krishna mantra, the first birth is the day that we are born physically, we come into this world, that's the first birth. And second birth is the day of our spiritual awakening. So in our Sri Krishna Pranami faith, the day that we receive the Nijanam mantra, the day we are initiated into the Sri Krishna Pranami faith, as the Vedic scriptures state, the day we receive the mantra of Sri Krishna, then what happens? Maya dura mupagata. Maya, the cosmic illusion, is driven far away from us. And the day we get the Krishna mantra from our spiritual master, it is believed, Dvitiyam Janma Katyate, it is believed, it is stated as the second life. So Chintamani, the spiritual master of Kabir tradition with more than 500 disciples 400 years ago, just reflect that for a moment. He was widely famous around Tatanagar, more than 500 disciples. He had a huge temple built. He had many people, many followers in his service. He asked Prananath for a new name, and he asked for a new service, because he said, "Prananath, I'm ready to go with you. I'm ready to walk alongside you in awakening Sundarsats. And I want a service from you. I want to serve Sundarsat. And give me a service that most of the people would hate." And he took up a service of delivering mails, delivering letters, handwritten letters from one place to the other, from Prananath to Sundarsats living far across. The letters from Nautanpuri to Prananath to Nautanpuri, in all the places. And he would have to walk days to deliver those mails, because back then there were no other means of transportation other than the carts. And in most of the places he would have to walk for days. Dear Sundarsatsi, there is no hierarchy in service, which means one service is not superior to others. Chintamani is willing to accept whatever role is assigned to him. That is the greatness of Chintamani. A new name is given to him, Syamaldasi. That is the glory of Syamaldasi. Now the question is, where are we on this? when we go to the temple, when we go to the religious institution, when we have to, what service do we take up? Do we like to host the religious function, or we take up a role of cleaning the bathroom, for instance? Nobody wants to clean the bathroom, but that needs to be kept clean too. That is a service. It may be regarded lowly in worldly way, worldly thoughts, but in the eyes of Shree Maharaj, that is the one most glorified. So Chintamani, Syamal Dasi, takes up a role of delivering meals, which would take days. He would have to walk for days, sometimes without food and water. But he realized that there was a glory in doing it, to be able to serve Prananath, to be able to serve Sundar Satsi. So he was happy that he could help in any way possible. Dear Sundar Shahji, there is a lot of teachings, there is a lot of things to learn about selfless service in this Beetak, in the events of this Beetak, in the lives of Satguru and Mahamati Swami Sri Prananath and all the Sundar Shahs that were there at the time of Mahamati and Satguru Maharaj. So a lot of self-reflection is needed, because Beetak is here to awaken our souls. Beetak gives a way for realizing our true glory, the glory of Sundar Shahs, our promises. So Syamal Dasi takes up such a role. So while Mahamati Prananath is in Thatanagar, इन समय में चर्चा बड़ी जो हो बेती त साथ की आमदानी हुई बहुत ही न बखत साथ की आमदानी. It is a term that you should always remember, साथ की आमदानी. So with Mahamati Prananath's transcendent teachings and revelations of scriptures and selfless service, and smile in his face, and the service of Sundar Shahji, the number of Sundar Shahji continues to grow. Now let's reflect that for a moment. As holistic as Mahamati Prananath's teachings are, Mahamati is unknown to the world. Mahamati Prananath is not known to the world. If you look at the Vedic, the religious encyclopedia, Vedic religious books, the research on Vedic scholars, there is a lot of research. There are hundreds of thousands of books about Kabir. There are hundreds of thousands of books about other Vedic scriptures and Vedic scholars like Paramhamsa Ramakrishna, Nityananda, Ballavacharya. There are so many books about these religious scholars. They talked about Sri Krishna's Leela, many of them. But Mahamati Prananath's teachings are as holistic as anybody else's. He talked about religious harmony. He promoted comparative study of religions. He talked about the synthesis of Vedic and Abrahamic religious traditions. He revealed the supreme abode. He revealed the Leelas of Paramdham. Yet, Mahamati Swami Sri Prananath is unknown to the world. There is not a single thesis written about Prananath yet. Not a single university has any research articles about Mahamati Swami Sri Prananath. Sundar Shahji. When I was attending McGill University in Canada for my religious studies course, when I was doing my master's there, I was thinking about writing a thesis on Mahamati Prananath, and I found myself so limited due to the lack of research materials on Prananath. We are lagging far behind compared to newly established religious traditions and sects. comparable to Om Shanti, which has millions of followers around the world, and United Nations has given a consultative status to Om Shanti religious sect. Mahamati Prananaji's tradition is lagging far behind, far behind. And we are not working on promoting our faith to the Western world. It was only during 1990s, or a little ahead of that, probably 1960s, that Prabhupada came to New York, empty-handed, without anything with him. And he established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It is spread across more than 150 countries. The followers are from all different countries. In Europe, ISKCON is greatly popular. If you go to Africa, people are singing Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. But if we look at the tradition, if we look at the understanding of Dharma, if we look at the teachings of Mahamati Prananaji, we are not being able to promote his understanding, his divine vision, his transcendent understanding to the world. While there are so many Krishna devotees, they are unaware of the distinctions of Krishna Leelas. They are worshipping the incarnation of Lord Vishnu as the Lord Supreme, while many Vedic scriptures are speaking that Lord Vishnu is not the Lord Supreme. And the moksha, the liberation that they are talking about, would not be attained with the penance, with their prayers to Lord Vishnu incarnate. If those secrets could be revealed and people could be indulged, engaged in the devotional service of Aksharatita Sri Krishna, that would be the greatest service to humanity that we could offer. Devchandraji. I feel really helpless sometimes, to be honest with you, because I went to an international religious conference in Salt Lake City in 2015, where there are more than 10,000 participants from different religious traditions and sects. And I was the only one attending on behalf of Sri Krishna Pranami faith. I had nothing to offer to the world because I did not have many resources and time to prepare. I gave a presentation. There were probably about 30 people attending that presentation. And there were so many presentations happening simultaneously. I talked about Prananaji and his understanding of comparative religious studies. I could do what I could with my limited time and limited preparations. But if we could go collectively and talk about Prananaji, offer to the world that they had never been offered, what opportunity would that be? Dear Sundarshaji, Sataki Amdani hui bahutai na bakata. There were a lot of Sundarshats, a lot of people awakened in Tatanagar by Mahamati Prananaji that time. With such an understanding, we can change the world. We should be able to change the world. We should be able to change the outlook of religious harmony and religious tolerance in the world and establish global peace. But where are we? That is the question we gotta ask ourselves. Are our youths taking the lead in promoting the teachings of Mahamati Prananaji? Are we engaging? Are we making sure that these youngsters are actively participating in awakening efforts? That is a question we gotta ask ourselves. Where are we on this? Because until these youths, who are the future of our faith, actively engage in the propagation of Mahamati Prananaji's teachings, we are getting nowhere. Until the Western scholars show interest in the works of Mahamati Prananaji, the West is never going to embrace the teachings of Mahamati Prananaji. Hundreds of thousands of research and theses should be written about Mahamati Prananaji until then the West is not going to embrace the teachings of Mahamati Prananaji. There is a lot of work to be done. And I would like all of you to think through that and come up with ideas, come up with plans in awakening not only the people of the East, not only the people in India and Nepal, but also people from all around the world. Because as Mahamati Prananath continues to say that these souls from Paramdham are across different faiths. Na jane isa jhunda mein kaun suhagina, where says Mahamati. So, do we take up this responsibility, or we'll deflect it on somebody? Because we talked about the smoky room experiment. When there are more people, we deflect the responsibility to other people. We wait for other people to respond. Are we doing the same, or are we taking the lead? Are we merely the followers, or we are trying to be a leader? That is a question. Because only the leaders have their legacy written, not the followers. Not the followers in their sense. And we all want to be the leader. We should all be the leaders. And that is how our legacy is preserved and our legacy is written. So a lot of Sundarsats come to the discourse of Mahamati Prananath. The number of Sundarsats continue to grow. It is not that, having said all of this, it is not that the number is not growing. The number of Sundarsats is growing, yet they are not as spiritually inclined, spiritually active, and we could do much more. That is all I'm saying. Because in the year 1979, Om Shanti was established by Lekhraj Kriplani, a jeweler who would sell jewelry. And in around 4 decades, in about 42 years, Om Shanti has spread across more than 150 countries. Think that for a moment. They have thousands of religious scholars. They preach in multiple languages, in Chinese, in English, in German, in Dutch, in French, all different languages, and they have religious institutions all across the world. And think for a moment that Om Shanti movement was initially banned in India as a cult. And the movement was once bankrupt. They did not have any resource, they did not have any wealth. And now, Om Shanti has a consultative status. Whatever happens, whenever some big issues come up, they go to the leaders of Om Shanti movement for suggestions and guidance. They have the consultative status in the United Nations. And if you look at the views of some of their videos, some of the saints of Om Shanti movement, they have millions of views and they have millions of followers. Dear Sundarsats, with Raji Maharaj guiding us, with Lord Supreme guiding us, with Lord Supreme revealing us the secrets of the Vedas and the Puranas and the Bibles and the Torahs, where are we? Why are we not doing enough in the awakening of the world, in spreading the message of love, in spreading the message of religious harmony? Because Mahamati Prananath's teachings have 3 parts. 1, the revelation of the Vedic scriptures. 2nd, the revelations of the Abrahamic scriptures like the Bible and the Quran. And 3rd, the revelation of the divine abode of Paramdham. With that understanding, we could confidently go around the world and awaken people. But we are lagging so far behind. It is beyond my understanding. Why? Why is this happening? Sundarsatji, if you are concerned about the state of Sri Krishna Pranami faith, then you are on a right track. You should be concerned. We all should be concerned why we are lagging far behind. We should have millions of followers around the world. We should have had millions of followers by now. We should have had millions of temples, millions of places where we would sing the glory of Prananath. Instead of Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, instead of that mantra, we could be singing. The world could be singing. Apne dhani Sri Syama Syam Apna vasa hai niz dham Apne dhani Sri Syama Syam Apna vasa hai niz dham. We could just sing that. The world could sing that. And the world could realize the eternal glory of Paramdham. We could have ensured that without efforts. Devchandraji, it's never too late, but the steps have to be taken. The initiatives have to be taken. If not us, who will? That is the question. If not us, who will? Because the responsibility of awakening the world is entrusted upon all Sundarsats, me, you, everyone. And when we all come together and take up these responsibilities, it would not take long. Because it is not the lack of resources for which we are lagging behind. It is the lack of coordination, lack of planning. And when we set aside our differences, our narrow mindedness, and work towards a common glory, then it can be done. And it won't take much time for us to sign in the world, spread, propagate the teachings of Mahamati Prananath to the west, to the east, to the north, to the south, to Africa, to Europe, to Asia, to Southeast Asia, to all the countries, to Latin America, all places. Because the whole world is waiting. The whole world is anticipating such an understanding, a divine understanding, the spiritual revelation that could teach people, that could show a path of living happily in this world and let them experience the glory of the beyond. And it could only be possible with the teachings and propagation of Mahamati Prananath's teachings and revelations. It would not be possible otherwise. That's why we continuously sing the verse of Mahamati Prananath, Nija naam soi zahir hua jaki sabduni raha dekhat. The whole world was awaiting the arrival of Satguru and Mahamati Prananath and their divine teachings. Because with the revelations, Mukta Deshi Brahmanda, the world could be awakened, the world could be liberated from the clutches of Maya. Dear Sundarsaji, I would like all of you to reflect on this. Kripaluji Maharaj, who initiated Hare Ram, Hare Krishna movement, Hare Ram movement, Hare Krishna movement, have hundreds of thousands of religious institutions around the world. In Texas, they have a big temple called Barsana Dham. They got hundreds of temples in United States alone. Now, a lot of Sundarsats in the state of Gujarat, India, are turning to Swaminarayan, a new Vaishnava tradition, because they are missing something in Sri Krishna Pranami faith. That surprises me, because as holistic as Mahamati Prananath is teaching, it is not because they could not find the joy and pleasure in understanding and listening to Mahamati Prananath's revelations. It is because they saw something missing there. They saw that they could not feel proud of calling themselves the adherents of Mahamati Prananath, the followers of Sri Krishna Pranami faith. They saw something more meaningful in Swami Narayan. When do we come together, Sundar Shastri? When do we come together and unequivocally spread the teachings of Mahamati Prananath and experience, not just speak, but experience the glory of Paramdham? When do we start meditating on the lotus feet of Prananath and the Lord Supreme Radhyamaji? When do we start doing the Chitavani of Paramdham? When do we spend hours and hours singing the glory of Dhamdhani? When do we spend hours in the Kirtan and devotional service of Sri Krishna? We're just reading the text, calling ourselves Sundar Sat. We are from Paramdham. We are living with that false glory, but we haven't had any experience of Raji Maharaj in our lives. There is a lot to be concerned about, Sundar Satji. Until we do, this is the fate, and this is the state of Sri Krishna Pranami faith. Like I said, not a single Western scholar has looked into the teachings of Mahamati Prananath. Not a single thesis has been written about Mahamati Prananath. There are a lot of bhakti movements, bhakti movement scholars in Vedic literature, but Mahamati Prananath's name is nowhere to be found. Dear Sundar Shahji, if you are not concerned about the state of our faith, then I would hate to say, but you are not serious about your faith. You are not a true Sundar Shah for that matter. Let's go ahead and continue our discourse, but I hope that you would reflect on these issues that I just talked about. Mahamati Prananath is in Thattanagar, and there is a guy called Chatura Brahman who comes to the discourse of Mahamati Prananath. He's a local farmer who delivers milk and other goods to one of the businessmen in town called Lakshman Seth. चतुरा एक पोहर कना आवे श्री राज की सेवा में ल्यावे दूध नित्याने सुनी चरचा कानो हिने तहाँ ब्रजराज का वर्णन होता था नित्याना वह देखा अचंबा हो वही चरचा सुनते कानो. And this Chatura Brahman in Thattanagar is surprised by the revelations of Mahamati Prananath. Mahamati Prananath talks about eternal Braja and eternal Raj. He talks about the fact that the eternal Braja and eternal Raj did not happen in this world, but happening continuously, eternally in the minds of imperishable Brahma or Akshara Brahma. In the sublic Brahmas Mahakarana and Karana are Brajalila and Raslila happening eternally. And listening to all this discourse, he is surprised because he goes to the place of Lakshman Seth, whom we know now by the name of Lal Dasi. He is also the author of this Beetak, this biography that we are our Beetak discourse is based on. So he goes to Lal Dasi in the place of Lakshman Seth or Lal Dasi. And he also, a successful businessman in Thattanagar. We had more than 99 ships delivering goods to Arab, bringing things from Arab. He's a very successful businessman, a wealthy businessman, yet he had religious dispositions. He would engage in a Bhagavata discourse before the day would begin. He would have hundreds of employees with him, and he would give sermon. He would give the speech, he would give the discourse on the teachings of Bhagavatam. He would talk about the Braja Lila, Ras Lila, and Sri Krishna Leelas for that matter. And तहाँ उनकी सुहबत लालसों नित्या ने बखार में होए, तहाँ आए चतुरे कही चरचा सुन के आया जोए. And he questions Laldas here. Lakshman said one day, कहा ब्रज अखंड क्यों कर, कहा रास अखंड, ये तो तुम कहता हो न्यारा जो ब्रह्मांड. तब चतुरे ने कहा, क्यों आवे तुम्हारी नजर, तुम दिव्य दृष्टि कब पाओगे, क्यों कर होए अजर. He asked Laldas, you talk about eternal Braja and eternal Ras. Can you please tell me where this eternal Braja and eternal Ras took place? You've been talking about the eternal Leelas of Sri Krishna, Braja and Ras Leela, and you speak from the book of Bhagavatam. So please tell us, if you say that eternal Braja Leela and eternal Ras happened in this Vrindavan, in India, in present day India, Satura Brahman says, why do not we see it? When we go to Vrindavan, why do not we witness the eternal Leelas of Sri Krishna? Because eternal means continuously happening, something that ceases to exist, that always exists, that always happens. That is what eternal means. Eternality is something that exists forever. So he asked Lakshman Seth, where did eternal Braja Leela happen? Where did eternal Ras Leela happen? Lakshman Seth says, only when your divine eye, your heart opens up, then only you would be able to witness the Braja Leela and Ras Leela in Vrindavan. Chatura Brahman said, in fact, I would disagree to that. I would say that the eternal Braja Leela and eternal Ras Leela did not happen in this world. It happened in the Mahakarana of Sablik Brahma, in the wisdom matrix of Akshara's mind. It did not happen in this world. And that is where it is happening eternally. Lakshman Seth was puzzled. He was surprised. He was awestruck. The guy who delivers milk to my place is questioning my intellect here. Lakshman Seth asked, where did you learn all this? Who did you tell? Who told you that eternal Braja Leela did not happen in this world? Who told you? Because I know for sure that it is not coming out of you. Then Chatura Brahman said, it was Mahamati Prananath. And I go to his discourse every day. Chatura Brahman continues to ask him, पांच तत्व तीन गुण को जब भयो ब्रह्मांड को नाश तब ब्रज और रास की ठोर कहाँ रही खास. You say Braja Leela and Ras Leela are eternal in this world. But the scriptures say that the 14 planes, 7 heavenly and 7 ethereal worlds, 7 Swarga and 7 Naraka, these are perishable. Tina Guna, 3 attributes of the world, Sata, Raja and Tama, all these 3 gunas, 14 planes, would be dissolved at times of Prakritik Pralaya, at the time of dissolution. So if Braja Leela and Ras Leela are eternal, then what happens when the whole world perishes? तब लाल दास चौकिया ते कहाँ सुनी ये बात मोहे ठोर बताए दे ओ ये कहाँ पाई सिफत जात. Then Lal Das asked Chatra, where did you learn this? Take me to the place, take me to the person who told you all of this. आया बुलावने चतुरा चला अपने संग लगाए आए पहुंचे कदमों भेंट करी बनाए. Then Chatura asked Mahamati Prananaji that Lakshmana Seth, or Lal Dasi that we know by today. He asked Prananaji if he could bring Lal Dasi to his discourse, and Mahamati Prananaji agreed. Any inquisitive mind, anyone wanting to know about the Lord Supreme and his Leelas, they were welcome in his discourse. So Lal Dasi or Lakshmana Seth finally meets Prananaji. Aaye pahunche kadamo bheta kari banaye, and he greets with utmost respect. It is the story of the writer of this Beetak himself, Mahamati Lal Dasi, is writing the history of his awakening here. Mahamati Prananaji gave a discourse on eternal Braja and Ras. Mahamati Prananaji talked about the process of creation. We were in Param Dham and we wanted to witness the game of suffering because we could not understand our providence of being with Raji Maharaj eternally in Param Dham. We took his love for granted. We did not understand his glory and his power and his potential. So Raji Maharaj sent us to witness this game of suffering and duality. So when Mahamati Prananaji talked all about this, Lal Dasi was still not convinced. Then Mahamati Prananaji gave a reference of a sage known as Markandeya. He gave the reference of Markandeya. One day, Markandeya Rishi found himself in Sataloka, or Vaikuntha, the place of Lord Vishnu, as he worshipped Lord Vishnu for hundreds of years. So Lord Narayana, Lord Vishnu, was happy with his prayers, and he finds himself in Vaikuntha. And he asked Lord Vishnu, I have heard a lot about the power of Maya, your creation, forgetfulness, Maya, Moha, attachment, all these things. But it feels like your Maya, it's stated, is not as powerful. I think I have defeated Maya. Is it possible that you display the power of Maya to me? I just want to see it. I just want to see it. Initially, Lord Vishnu was hesitant, but Markandeya was asking for that again and again and again. And Lord Vishnu finally said, okay, Tathastu, be it. I would show you Maya one day. So the next day, he took Sage Markandeya to the bank of Yamuna River. Sage Markandeya was thinking when I would get to witness Maya, because God promised me. And Narayana was just grinding the sandalwood to put on his forehead. And he asked Markandeya to get some water for him, because he was grinding the sandalwood against a stone. So he needed some water. So he asked Sage Markandeya, can you please fetch some water for me? And it so happened that in no time, the flooding happened. The Yamuna River had raised into the flow of water, and it so happened that Markandeya Rishi found himself taken away by the swollen river of Yamuna. And he felt that in no time he would be swallowed by river Yamuna. And it so happened that when Yamuna river was sweeping Markandeya Rishi, he finds himself as a woman, and he did not have any clothes on him. So Markandeya Rishi finds himself as a woman with no clothes and swept by Yamuna river. And there were few washermen washing clothes for people, and she asked for help. She asked people to rescue her. And one of the washermen says, "Only if you marry me," because he sees her as a beautiful woman. And he says, "Only if you marry me, then I will rescue you. I will pull you out of the river." And she had no choice but to agree. And she married the washerman. And in a few years, she gave birth to dozens of kids. And she became so engaged in the worldly affairs. Her husband would go wash people's clothes and make a living for them. She would take care of their kids. And one day, Lord Vishnu realized that says Markandeya had to be rescued. And he went to the place of says Markandeya, now the wife of that washerman. He went as a Brahmin to the place, and he asked if she could give him some alms. But before she could give anything to him, to a Brahmin, to a saint, Viksha, he said, "I have a story to tell you." She doesn't time for that though. And she says, "I'm too busy taking care of my kids. I'll get you this much rice and you please walk away from here. If we have something to share, then my husband would probably be able to do that. I do not have time for it." But Lord Vishnu in disguise as a Brahmin insisted, "Let me share my story. I tell stories." And finally, after a lot of hesitation, she agreed, but with a timeline, we have 5 minutes. And Lord Vishnu in disguise as a Brahmana started sharing a story of sage Markandeya. Markandeya Rishi, the sage Markandeya, once said that he defeated the Maya created by the Lord. And one day, Lord Vishnu asked him to fetch some water, and Jamuna river flooded and swept him. And he got married. He found himself as a beautiful girl, and a washerman married her. And now she is the mother of a dozen kids, and she does not have time for anything. And at that time, when she said, "Oh, that was me," Markandeya Rishi finds himself in Vaikuntha and realizes that it was his dream. He was in the dream, being a girl, marrying a washerman, the boiling Yamuna river, the flooding, the sweeping of himself by Yamuna river was nothing but a mere dream. Dear Sundar Sadhji, we are just like the sage Markandeya. We are there in Paramdham right now in our eternal form, non-dual form, living in the eternal presence of Rasyamaji. We are right now witnessing this world from Paramdham Rangamahal, the first floor of Rangamahal, from the meeting of Mul Milava. And we have found ourselves as somebody's husband, somebody's wife, somebody's son, somebody's daughter. We're struggling in life due to our financial issues, relational issues, career issues, things of that nature. And it feels like their time is running so slow. It feels like the life is too long. Just like when we go to our dream, scientifically proven, our dreams are between 3 minutes and 15 minutes. All our dreams, they cannot be longer than 15 minutes. And during our sleep, we have multiple dreams. And in that dream, we find ourselves as a kid and we grow to be old. And a lot of time passes in our dream, but in reality, in our sleep, we barely sleep. The dreams are no longer than 15 minutes, but the chapter of our whole life is visualized in our dream. Similarly, Sundarsaji, the time, a single second has not passed in Paramdham, in the eternal abode of Raji Syamaji, but it feels like we have spent many lives in this world. And just like says Markandeya finds himself as a beautiful woman married to a washerman, a dhobini, she becomes a dhobini. We have become a teacher, we have become a professional, we have become a complaining son, we have become like, we have had different experiences in this world. And when Mahamati Prananath gave the reference of, says Markandeya, Lakshman said, or Lal Dasi is awakened. Mahamati Prananath gave the reference of, says Markandeya, and he says, just like that, the consorts of Lord Supreme, the Brahma Srishti, have become forgetful of their true identity, just like the woman actually was, the says Markandeya, she was forgetful of her true self. She was none other than, says Markandeya, but she did not know that. Similarly, we are the consorts of Lord Supreme, but we are forgetful. And we are struggling with our life mightily. Every day, we are worried about what is coming in our lives. We are worried about the dangers. We are worried about the risk. We are worried about the uncertainties of our lives. But Mahamati Prananath says, there is nothing to worry about it, because we are in Paramdham. We'll be awakened in Paramdham. We are the consorts of the Lord Supreme. Dear Sundarsaji, thus, Lakshman Seth is awakened, Lal Dasi is awakened, whom Mahamati Prananath glorifies a lot, because he is there. Once awakened, he continues awakening Sundarsats. He continues being with Mahamati Prananath, helping him in the awakening efforts. He writes this Beetak, this biography of Satguru Maharaj and Prananath Maharaj. He is always there for Prananath. He is always there for Dharma. Thus, Lal Dasi is awakened. So here in this chapter, Lal Dasi talks about his awakening in his own words. On tomorrow's discourse, we'll talk about Mahamati Prananath's journey to Mashkat and Abbasi Bandar, awakening of Bhairav Seth, another businessman. And his awakening has few enlightening messages for us, messages of awakening for us, some true values of spiritual practices, pure spiritual practices. So that would be the topic of tomorrow's discussion. So Sundarsaji, thank you all for joining.